This is the story of how my marriage ended in one night, and how a woman who thought she had won everything lost far more than she expected. My husband, Benjamin, believed his secret was safe. His boss, Amelia Blackwood, believed power made her untouchable. Both of them were wrong. What began with a message sent at 2:00 a.m. turned into a chain of events none of us could stop once it started. At exactly 2:00 a.m., my phone vibrated on the nightstand. I woke instantly. That hour never brings good news. I reached for the phone with a tight chest, already preparing myself for an emergency. My mother had been unwell. Benjamin's parents lived far away. I expected panic, not betrayal. The message came from my husband's phone. But it wasn't written by him. "He's mine now, he's occupied, don't wait up." 12 words, calm, deliberate, final. I stared at the screen until my hands stopped shaking enough to breathe. The sender name confirmed what my mind was already screaming: Amelia Blackwood. My husband's boss, vice president. The woman whose name came up too often in our conversations and never casually. She had taken his phone, she had typed that message herself, and she had sent it to me on purpose. Benjamin had left home the evening before, saying he needed to finish work for a client presentation. He wore his best suit, kissed my cheek, promised he wouldn't be late. By midnight, I had stopped waiting. By 2:00 a.m., Amelia made sure I understood why. I didn't cry, I didn't call him, I didn't ask for explanations. I typed 7 words and sent them. "Keep him, we're done." I set the phone down and waited. 20 minutes passed in silence. Then I heard a car pull into the driveway, doors opened. Footsteps followed, 2 sets. When the doorbell rang, I already knew who it was. Through the peephole, I saw my husband standing stiffly, his tie loose, his face pale. Beside him stood Amelia. Calm, smiling, proud. She looked like someone arriving to collect something she believed she had earned. I opened the door. Benjamin started speaking immediately, words tumbling over each other, excuses, apologies, explanations that meant nothing now. Amelia said nothing. She just watched me, measuring my reaction, waiting for tears or anger or collapse. Instead, I stepped aside and let them in. That was the moment everything changed. Because while Amelia thought the message was her victory, it was actually her mistake. And she had no idea that before she rang my doorbell, I had already decided how this story would end. They stepped inside like they belonged there. Benjamin kept talking, rushing ahead of himself, saying it was a mistake, that it meant nothing, that he could explain everything if I just let him. His voice shook. He didn't look at Amelia once. He didn't need to. She stood behind him, silent, composed, watching me the way people watch a result they already expect. I didn't respond to him. I closed the door and turned the lock. The sound landed harder than any shout. Benjamin stopped talking. I looked at Amelia then. "You came a long way for this," I said. "You might as well stay." Her smile tightened, but she nodded. I pointed toward the stairs. "Benjamin, upstairs, guest room." "What?" he said. "No, we should talk together." "This doesn't involve you anymore," I said. "Go." He hesitated, then looked at Amelia, as if waiting for permission. That was the moment I knew exactly how deep this went. He went upstairs without another word. The silence between me and Amelia settled fast. "You handled that message well," she said finally. "Most women don't." "You didn't send it for me," I replied. "You sent it for yourself." She tilted her head slightly. "I sent it to be honest." "No," I said. "You sent it to mark territory." Her smile returned, sharper now. "He chose me." I didn't ask who he chose. She crossed her arms. "Then why invite me inside?" "Because I wanted to see you clearly," I said, "and I wanted you to hear something without an audience." Her eyes narrowed. "Go on." I stepped closer, not angry, not emotional, just focused. "How many times have you done this?" She laughed softly. "You think this is some kind of pattern?" "I think you're very comfortable," I said. "Too comfortable for this to be new." Her expression shifted for a fraction of a second. Not fear, calculation. "You're upset," she said. "You're looking for someone to blame." "I already know who to blame," I said. "That's not what I'm doing." She studied me more carefully now. "Then what are you doing?" I met her eyes, confirming something. Her smile faded completely. "You don't know anything," she said, "and if you think you can turn this into something else, you're mistaken." "I don't need to turn it into anything," I replied. "You already did." Footsteps creaked above us. Benjamin was listening. Amelia noticed it too. "You should focus on your marriage," she said, "not on me." I shook my head. My marriage ended at 2:00 a.m. She opened her mouth to respond, then stopped. That hesitation told me everything. "Sit," I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. "This won't take long." She didn't sit right away. She hesitated again, then she did. And in that moment, the balance shifted. Because Amelia came here thinking this was about a man. She hadn't realized it was about exposure. And she hadn't realized I was already prepared. Amelia sat across from me, composed again but slower now. Careful, she was recalculating. "You're making this bigger than it is," she said. "An affair doesn't need a courtroom tone." "This isn't about an affair," I replied. "That part is already finished." She leaned back, "Then say what you want." I didn't answer immediately. Silence works better than accusations. People fill it with mistakes. "I want to ask you one thing," I said, "and I want a straight answer." Her lips pressed together. "Ask." "How many wives came before me?" Her eyes flicked away for half a second. Not denial, recognition. "I don't know what you're implying," she said. "I'm not implying," I replied. "I'm checking consistency." She laughed again, but it sounded thinner. "You think I go around collecting married men?" "I think you choose them," I said, carefully. Her jaw tightened. "That's insulting." "So is texting a wife from her husband's phone at 2 in the morning." Her face hardened. "He let me." "That's not what I asked." Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Benjamin shifted his weight, still listening. "You're emotional," Amelia said, "and emotional people invent patterns." "I don't invent," I replied. "I verify." She leaned forward. "You have nothing, and even if you did, people like me don't fall over personal drama." "People like you," I repeated. "That's interesting wording." She caught herself too late. I stood. "You didn't come here to apologize, you came to be seen." Her eyes followed me. "I came because I don't hide." "No," I said, "you came because you've done this before." Her confidence finally cracked. "Careful," she warned. "You don't know who you're dealing with." "I do," I said. "That's why you're still sitting." Her breathing changed, slower, controlled, defensive. "You think you can scare me," she said, "but I have lawyers, a reputation, influence." "And a history," I replied. That landed. She straightened. "Say it." "You move companies quietly," I said. "Always upward, always clean exits, but complaints don't disappear, they just get buried." Her eyes locked on mine. "You're bluffing." "I didn't bluff at 2:00 a.m., I said. "I ended my marriage in 7 words." She stared at me, searching for cracks. "I spent the 20 minutes after your message reading," I continued. "Not crying, not panicking." Her fingers curled into her palm. "You shouldn't have come here," I said. "You should have stayed invisible." Benjamin's voice suddenly broke from upstairs. "Evelyn, what is she talking about?" Amelia didn't look at him. I did. "She's done this before," I said calmly, "and you weren't the exception." Benjamin went silent. Amelia stood. "This conversation is over." "No," I replied. "Now it's finally started." She turned toward the door. "You leave when I'm finished," I said. She paused. That pause told me everything. Because for the first time since she walked in, Amelia wasn't in control. And she knew it. Amelia didn't sit back down. "You're crossing a line," she said. "You have no proof." I didn't say I needed proof, I replied. I said I needed confirmation. Benjamin came halfway down the stairs. His face looked empty, like someone realizing too late that the ground under him was never solid. "What is she talking about?" he asked again. "Evelyn." I didn't look at him. "Go upstairs," I said. "You don't want to hear this part." "I deserve to know," he said. Amelia turned to him sharply. "You don't." That was the mistake. Benjamin froze. He looked at her now, really looked at her, and something shifted. I spoke before either of them could recover. 3 companies, I said, 2 before this one. Same pattern every time. Amelia's face went still. You're guessing, she said. I'm remembering, I replied. Names don't disappear when you know where to look. She took a step toward me. You think gossip matters. I think records matter, I said. Settlements, quiet exits, promotions that followed complaints instead of investigations. Benjamin swallowed. Complaints. Amelia turned on him. Stay out of this. But he didn't move. Tell him, I said to her. Tell him why you never stay anywhere long. Her voice dropped. You're trying to intimidate me. No, I said. I'm explaining why your message was reckless. She laughed once, sharp. You really think you can touch me? I already did, I replied, the moment you used his phone. Her expression changed. Not anger, not fear, calculation again. You don't understand how this works, she said. People like me don't lose over accusations. I didn't accuse, I said. I connected. Benjamin stepped down another stair. Amelia, have you done this before? She didn't answer him. That answer was enough. You told me I was special, he said quietly. You said this was different. She finally looked at him. You were useful. The word hit him harder than anything else. I continued. You target men who won't talk, men who panic about careers, men who think silence protects them. That's enough, Amelia snapped. Not yet, I said. You made sure I knew about you. Now you know about me. Her voice dropped. What do you want? There it is, I said, the real question. Benjamin looked between us. Evelyn, what's happening? I answered without hesitation. She's deciding whether she leaves quietly or loudly. Amelia stared at me. You're threatening me. I'm offering you control, I replied, the last kind you'll get. She exhaled slowly. You have no idea what you're starting. I do, I said, and so do you. Silence followed, heavy, final. Benjamin sank onto the stairs. Amelia straightened her shoulders. Say it, she said. What exactly are you holding? I met her eyes. Everything you thought no one would connect. And for the first time that night, Amelia didn't interrupt. She waited. Amelia didn't blink. If you're bluffing, stop now. I'm not, I said, and that's why you're still listening. Benjamin stood up slowly. What does she have? I answered him without looking away from Amelia. A timeline, messages, photos, statements. His face drained. You hired someone. 6 weeks ago, I said, when lying became routine. Amelia's control slipped for the first time. That's illegal. It's documented, I replied. Public places, public records, voluntary statements. She shook her head once. You're trying to scare me. I don't need to, I said. You already know what's there. I picked up my phone and unlocked it. I didn't confront him, I said. I watched. Amelia leaned forward, despite herself. Chicago, I said. Not one trip, 3, same hotel, same room type. Benjamin whispered, Evelyn. Dinner receipts, I continued. Restaurants you told me you hated. Amelia stood abruptly. This is harassment. Then why does it match? I asked. Every pattern, every complaint. Benjamin looked at her. Complaints. She turned on him. You weren't supposed to know. That ended it. I turned the phone so she could see the screen. No commentary, no explanation. Her face changed immediately. Not confusion. Recognition. You kept records, she said quietly. I kept facts, I replied. She straightened. Those women signed agreements. Those agreements don't protect repeat behavior, I said, especially when it continues. Benjamin backed away like the room had shifted. You said I mattered, he said to her. You said this was real. She didn't deny it. She didn't apologize. She said, you believed what you needed to. Silence followed. I spoke again. This ends tonight. Amelia met my eyes. On whose terms? Mine, I said, because you gave them to me. She folded her arms. Say what you want. You resign, I said, effective immediately, no announcement, no references. She laughed once, and if I don't? Tomorrow morning, I said, this goes to your board, your CEO, and 3 journalists. Benjamin looked at me in disbelief. You destroy her career. She did that, I replied. I'm just removing silence. Amelia's jaw tightened. You think I'll just disappear? I think you'll choose the quieter ending, I said. You always do. She stared at me for a long time. Then she said, you planned this. I replied, you started it. Benjamin sank into a chair. Amelia reached for her phone, then stopped. 24 hours, I said. After that, I don't decide anymore. She nodded once. Not agreement. Acceptance. She walked to the door without another word. When it closed, the house felt different. Benjamin looked up at me. Is it over? I shook my head. No, I said, it's just visible now. The door closed behind her. Benjamin didn't move. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Whatever we had been before that night was gone, but the damage was still unfolding. She's bluffing, he said finally. She won't resign. She will, I replied, because she always leaves before questions start. He rubbed his face. You planned this before the message. I suspected, I said. The message confirmed. He looked up sharply. So you were watching me? I was watching the gaps, I replied. You filled them yourself. Silence again. She used me, he said, didn't she? Yes. He nodded slowly, like someone accepting a verdict. And now? Now you stop pretending this was love, I said, and I stopped pretending you didn't know what you were risking. His voice dropped. What happens to me? That depends on what you do next, I said. He stood. I'll quit, I'll cut contact, I'll tell them everything. You'll do nothing, I said. You don't control this. His eyes widened. I'm the one who. You were the entry point, I interrupted, not the pattern. He stepped back. I warned her, he said suddenly. Earlier, I told her you were serious. I looked at him. When? Yesterday, he admitted. I didn't think. You warned her, I said slowly. Yes. That settled everything. Pack your things, I said. Guest room tonight, gone by the weekend. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Upstairs, the floor creaked as he moved away. I sat alone with my phone. At 6:12 a.m., a notification appeared. Unknown sender. One line. You think this ends me? I didn't reply. At 9:00 a.m., Marcus called. She contacted legal, he said. That's a good sign. Meaning? She's scared, he replied, and people who aren't scared don't call lawyers at sunrise. At 11:40 a.m., an internal memo leaked. Executive resignation, immediate effect, personal reasons. At 12:15 p.m., another message appeared. You went too far. At 12:16, another. This could have stayed private. At 12:17. You ruined something that didn't concern you. I forwarded all of them. At 3:00 p.m., Marcus called again. 2 women reached out, he said. Former employees, same story. I closed my eyes. Add them. At 6:30 p.m., Benjamin left the house without a word. At 9:02 p.m., one final message arrived. No anger, no threats. Just 4 words. Please make this stop. I stared at the screen. Then I locked the phone. Because it had already stopped. For her, the next morning, the story shifted. Not publicly, quietly. Marcus sent me a file marked update. Inside were names, dates, companies, different cities, same structure. Amelia didn't chase chaos. She engineered control. She chose men who feared losing status more than they feared lying. Promotions followed silence. Distance followed exposure. Every time someone questioned her, she left before consequences formed. Benjamin hadn't been chosen because he was special. He had been chosen because he was predictable. At 10:18 a.m., my phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered. I was told to call you, a woman said. He gave me your number. Who? I asked. Marcus, she replied. He said you'd understand. I did. She worked at my company before yours, the woman continued. Different division, different year, same ending. I didn't interrupt. She told my husband he was the only one, that she trusted him, that his marriage was already broken. When I found out, I filed a complaint. What happened? I asked. Nothing, she said. She resigned 2 weeks later. I was offered a settlement and silence. And you took it. Yes. Her voice tightened. I shouldn't have. At noon, another call came. Then another. By evening, the pattern was undeniable. Different women, same words, same exits. At 7:42 p.m., Benjamin texted. They're asking questions at work. I didn't reply. At 8:11. They know about Chicago. Still nothing. At 8:19. I think they're going to fire me. I finally responded. That was always going to happen. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. She ruined me, he wrote. I stared at the message. No, I typed, you volunteered. At 9:30 p.m. Marcus called. She's trying to re-enter, he said. Different industry, same city. So soon, I asked. She doesn't know how to stop, he replied, only how to relocate. At 10:05 a draft article arrived. No names yet, just structure, just facts. At 11:14 p.m. a final message came from Amelia. You're enjoying this. I didn't answer. At 11:16. You think you're different from the others. I locked the phone. Because she still didn't understand. This was never about winning. It was about making sure she couldn't reset. And for the first time in years, she was running out of places to go. The article didn't go live immediately. That was intentional. Silence creates more pressure than exposure. Marcus told me Amelia had started calling former contacts, recruiters, executives, anyone who might offer a quiet landing. Doors were closing faster than she expected. At 9:00 a.m., the draft returned with names added. Hers included. I read it once, then again. No emotions, no opinions, just timelines, records, statements that matched too perfectly to dismiss. At 10:32 a.m., my phone rang. Amelia. I answered. You're making a mistake, she said. You don't understand the scale of what you're triggering. I understand it exactly, I replied. You think people will side with you, she asked. They'll see you as bitter, spiteful. They'll see a pattern, I said. You could stop this, she said, right now. You already resigned, I replied. That didn't stop it. Her voice dropped. You don't gain anything from this. I gain closure, I said, and you lose cover. Silence. Then she said, if this publishes, I won't recover. That depends, I replied, on how many people already recognize your name. She hung up. At 11:45 a.m., Benjamin emailed. They're suspending me pending review. I didn't open it. At 12:30 p.m., Marcus confirmed publication time. Friday, 8:00 a.m. 2 days away. At 3:10 p.m., a new message arrived. Unknown sender. She did this to us too. Attached were screenshots, dates aligned, messages mirrored each other word for word. At 6:00 p.m., the journalist called. We're adding one more source, he said, someone internal. I nodded, do it. That night, Amelia sent one final message. Let's talk, just us. I replied once. We already did. At 7:59 a.m. on Friday, my phone buzzed. At 8:00, the article went live. At 8:04, Amelia's name started trending. At 8:07, her former company released a statement. At 8:12, another company followed. At 8:20, the messages stopped. At 9:00 a.m., Marcus called. She's done, he said, no exits left. I sat still. At 9:47, Benjamin tried to call. I declined. Because the story no longer belonged to him. And Amelia no longer controlled how it ended, the fallout didn't explode. It folded inward. That's how real damage happens. At 10:15 a.m., Amelia's professional profile disappeared. At 10:42, her name was removed from the company site. By noon, the resignation memo had been replaced with another notice. Language changed, tone sharpened. At 12:18, Marcus sent one line. They've opened a formal review. That meant panic behind closed doors. At 1:07 p.m., a woman I didn't know emailed me. Subject line, "Thank you for not stopping." Inside was one paragraph. She didn't explain. She didn't need to. The pattern had already explained itself. At 2:30, another message arrived. This one from Amelia. "No threats, no confidence. You destroyed everything." I didn't reply. At 3:05, Benjamin showed up at the house. I didn't let him in. He stood outside and spoke through the door. "They terminated her access," he said. "They're reviewing everyone connected to her." I stayed silent. "They asked me for my phone," he continued. "They already have messages." Silence again. "I didn't know it would go this far," he said. "That's the problem," I replied. "You never thought past yourself." He didn't argue. At 4:40, Marcus called. "She contacted 2 former employers today," he said. "Both declined to speak with her." At 5:15, the journalist forwarded a message. Legal counsel had withdrawn representation. At 6:00, Amelia's assistant resigned. At 6:22, a private investigator confirmed she was preparing to leave the city. Not relocate. Disappear. At 7:10 p.m., a final email arrived from her. Short, careful, controlled. "You didn't win, you just ended something." I stared at the screen. Then I deleted it. Because she was right about one thing. Something had ended. Her pattern. Her access. Her ability to reset. And for the first time, there was no next company waiting quietly in the background. Only records. Only witnesses. Only consequences. The next day the calls slowed. That's when I knew something else was coming. People who lose power don't stop, they change tactics. At 9:30 a.m., Marcus sent another update. "She's trying to redirect blame," he said, claiming personal retaliation. "Against whom?" I asked. "Against you." I didn't react. At 10:05, a legal notice arrived in my inbox. Carefully worded, no accusations, just implication. It suggested harassment, defamation, emotional distress. Marcus read it and laughed once. "Weak." "She's testing," he added, "seeing if you'll retreat." "I won't," I said. At noon, the journalist called again. "She reached out to us," he said, "offered an interview." "Did you accept?" "No," he replied. "She wanted conditions." That told me everything. At 1:40 p.m., Benjamin texted. "She says you manipulated everyone." I typed one line. "She taught me the structure." At 3:00, another woman contacted Marcus. This one hadn't been named in the article. She'd stayed silent for years. Until now. At 4:12, Marcus forwarded her statement. Same beginning, same end. Different city. At 6:30, Amelia sent her last message. Not anger. Not fear. Precision. You could still stop the second piece. I replied once. There won't be a second piece. She misunderstood. At 7:00 p.m., the follow-up published anyway. It wasn't about her. It was about systems that protect people like her. Her name appeared once. Context did the rest. At 8:15, her accounts went dark. At 9:00, Marcus called. "She's gone," he said, "no forwarding address." At 9:20, Benjamin called. I didn't answer. At 9:21, I blocked him. Because the story had reached its end. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But permanently. And Amelia Blackwood would never get to reset again. When everything stopped moving, that was when the damage settled. No calls, no messages, no new names added to the story. Silence. That silence didn't mean peace, it meant assessment. At 8:10 a.m., my lawyer called. "Benjamin's firm is cooperating," she said. "They're distancing themselves fast." "At whose expense?" I asked. "His," she replied. "He's expendable." At 9:30, Marcus sent one last compiled file. Not new evidence, just confirmations, internal emails, timelines aligning too cleanly to argue against. At 10:15, a message came from a woman whose name never appeared anywhere. "I watched her do this twice," she wrote. I stayed quiet, thank you for not doing the same. I closed the message without replying. Some things didn't need answers. At noon, Benjamin showed up again. I didn't open the door. We need to talk, he said through it. They terminated me. I stayed silent. They said I failed to disclose a conflict, he continued. They said I damaged the firm. Silence again. I didn't think it would end like this, he said. That's because you never thought it would end at all, I replied. His voice dropped. She ruined everything. No, I said, she showed you how to ruin yourself. He didn't respond. At 1:45 p.m., my sister called. I saw the article, she said. Everyone's talking. I know. She's done, my sister said. Yes, I replied, but that's not the point. What is, she asked. I paused. She won't be able to do it again. At 3:00, Marcus sent one final note. 2 companies updated internal policy today, he wrote. Your case was cited anonymously. That mattered more than exposure. At 5:20, Amelia's name appeared one last time. A legal registry update, status changed, ongoing review. No commentary. No defense. At 7:00, Benjamin texted. I lost everything. I typed one sentence and sent it. You lost control, not everything. 3 dots appeared. Then nothing. I blocked the number. Because the damage was done. And the silence wasn't empty anymore. It was final. The story didn't end with her disappearance. It spread. Quietly. At 9:05 a.m., Marcus sent a short message. She tried to resurface. Where? I asked. Another firm, he replied. Different title, same background. I waited. They pulled the offer within an hour. That was new. At 10:30, the journalist forwarded an internal note from a recruiter. One line stood out. We cannot risk a repeat situation. No explanation, no debate. At noon, another woman reached out. This one didn't know Amelia personally. She knew the pattern. I recognized it immediately, she wrote, because it almost happened to me. That was the part Amelia never accounted for, recognition. At 1:40 p.m., my lawyer called again. Benjamin is contesting the separation, she said, claims emotional manipulation. I laughed once, let him. He doesn't have leverage, she replied, just noise. At 3:00, Marcus sent confirmation. She's been flagged internally across 3 firms. At 4:25, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. You didn't have to do this, a voice said, Amelia's voice. You didn't have to send that message, I replied. She inhaled slowly. You turned a private mistake into a public execution. No, I said, you turned repetition into evidence. Silence. You don't know what it's like to lose everything, she said. I do, I replied. I just didn't lose it the same way. Her voice hardened. You think this makes you powerful. I think it makes you finished, I said. The call ended. At 6:10, Marcus sent his last update. She's burning contacts, he wrote. People are stepping back. At 7:45, Benjamin emailed. Subject, please. I deleted it unread. At 9:00, a new article published. Smaller, quieter, industry-focused. Her name wasn't in the headline. That mattered more. Because now, she wasn't a scandal. She was a warning. And warnings don't fade. They circulate. They prevent repeats. And for the first time since that message at 2:00 a.m., I knew the story had shifted beyond me. It wasn't chasing her anymore. It was blocking her. After that call, nothing happened for 2 days. That was intentional. People like Amelia don't disappear without trying one last angle. On the 3rd day, Marcus called early. She's making a move, he said, not public, personal. I didn't ask how, I already knew. At 11:06 a.m., a document appeared in my inbox. No sender name, no message body. Just an attachment. I opened it. It was a statement, carefully written, polished, framed as concern. She was positioning herself as the victim. Claims of emotional distress, claims of obsession, claims that I had orchestrated everything out of jealousy and spite. She hadn't sent it to me by accident. She wanted me to react. I didn't. At 12:40 p.m., Marcus confirmed what I expected. She sent that to 2 firms, he said, trying to control the narrative before it reaches them. And, I asked. One forwarded it back to me, he replied. They asked if it matched the case file. That was the crack. At 2:15 p.m., the journalist messaged. She's calling this harassment now, he wrote, but she can't explain the overlap in testimonies. At 3:30, another woman contacted me directly. Short message. She tried to contact my husband yesterday. That stopped me. I called Marcus immediately. That's new, he said. She's desperate. At 5:00 p.m., confirmation came in. Amelia had reached out to someone she thought would stay silent. Someone who already knew the pattern. Instead of silence, the message had been forwarded. At 6:10 p.m., Marcus sent one word. Finished. At 7:00, an internal compliance notice leaked. Her name, attached, flagged. No explanation. Just the status. At 8:20, Benjamin texted from a new number. She contacted me. I didn't reply. At 8:22, another message came through. She wants me to say you pushed her. I answered once. If you lie now, you lose what little you have left. No response after that. At 9:45, Marcus sent the last update of the day. She crossed the line she couldn't undo. I closed my phone. Because when someone breaks their own pattern, it's not strategy anymore. It's collapse. And Amelia had just confirmed something important. She wasn't trying to escape. She was trying to survive. And survival looks a lot like exposure when the structure underneath is already broken. The next morning, it ended. Not publicly. Officially. At 8:30 a.m., Marcus sent a single file. Subject closed loop. Inside was confirmation from 3 separate firms, internal flags, shared compliance notes, her name marked as high risk. No explanations required. At 9:15, the journalist called. She's trying to retract everything, he said, claims misunderstanding. That's new, I replied. She offered to issue a public apology, he added, without admitting fault. That's not an apology, I said. At 10:00, Amelia emailed again. Short, direct. I'll disappear, just stop. I stared at the message. Then forwarded it. At 11:40, Marcus called. She contacted regulators, he said, asked how to clear her name. And they asked for documentation, he replied. She didn't realize how much existed. At noon, a legal update arrived. Her previous settlements were under review. That changed everything. At 1:30, a former executive from her first company reached out to Marcus. He'd ignored the signs years ago. Now he wanted distance. At 2:45, Benjamin emailed. Subject, I can fix this. I didn't open it. At 4:00, Amelia's last attempt arrived. A voicemail. No anger. No threats. Fear. I can't go anywhere, she said. They won't even talk to me. I deleted it. At 6:00, Marcus sent the final confirmation. She's been advised to step back indefinitely. That wasn't recovery. That was erasure. At 7:10, the journalist sent a draft headline. Not dramatic, not personal. Just factual. Executive exits amid review of repeated misconduct patterns. Her name wasn't in it. She didn't need it to be. At 8:00 p.m., Benjamin tried calling again. I blocked the number. Because there were no exits left. Not for her. Not for him. Only records. Only silence. Only consequences that didn't need witnesses to exist. After the last notice, nothing followed. That was the point. When systems finish closing ranks, they don't announce it. They move on. At 9:20 a.m., Marcus sent one final confirmation. No further activity, all channels blocked. I didn't ask which channels, I already knew. At 10:00, my lawyer called. Benjamin signed, she said. No contest, no conditions. Good, I replied. He asked if you reconsider, she added. I won't, I said. At 11:45, an internal message from a firm I'd never heard of appeared in my inbox. It wasn't meant for me. Someone had forwarded it without explanation. Candidate withdrawn due to compliance risk. No name, no context. That was enough. At 1:00 p.m., another woman contacted Marcus. She didn't want to speak publicly. She didn't need to. She wanted confirmation. Is it really over? She asked him. He told her the truth. Yes. At 2:30, Benjamin emailed from yet another address. She ruined my life. I deleted it. At 3:15, a recruiter reached out to Marcus privately. Is the file real? She asked. Yes, he replied. That ended the conversation. At 4:40, the journalist sent a message. This won't resurface, he said. The industry already adjusted. That was the final signal. At 6:00, my sister called. It's quiet, she said. Yes, I replied. At least now, she added, no one else gets pulled in. That mattered. At 8:00 p.m., I checked my phone for the first time in hours. No new messages. No threats. No pleas. No attempts. The silence wasn't relief. It was confirmation. Because when someone loses the ability to reach people, they lose more than power. They lose relevance. And Amelia Blackwood no longer existed where it mattered. I thought it was finished. That assumption lasted 12 hours. At 6:18 a.m., my phone rang. Blocked number. I didn't answer. It rang again. Then again. I picked up. You don't get to erase me, Amelia said. Her voice sounded different, stripped, tight. You erased yourself, I replied. You think this ends with silence, she said, but silence turns on people. It didn't turn on you, I said. It exposed you. She laughed once, sharp, empty. You were never meant to be part of this. That's where you failed, I said. You made me part of it. She paused. If I go down completely, others will follow. They already are, I replied. Her breathing changed. You don't know what you've triggered. I know exactly what stopped, I said. She lowered her voice. Benjamin will talk. He already did, I replied. That broke her. You're lying. I'm documenting, I said. Silence. Then her proving mistake. They promised me protection, she said. They always do. I didn't respond. She kept talking. They told me to move quietly, to reset, to wait it out. I stayed silent. I did everything right, she said. I followed the rules. That's the problem, I replied. You treated people like systems. Her voice cracked. You don't understand how long this took to build. I understand how fast it fell, I said. The line went dead. At 7:02 a.m., Marcus texted. She called you, didn't she? Yes. She's unraveling, he replied. That call confirms it. At 8:30, an internal compliance alert circulated. Unauthorized contact during review. That was it. At 9:15, the journalist messaged. She just disqualified herself from any future mediation. At noon, Benjamin emailed again. She contacted me last night, begging. I replied once. Don't answer. At 2:00 p.m., Marcus confirmed. She's under advisory restriction. Meaning monitored, contained. At 4:45, a final notification arrived. Unknown sender. One sentence. You won, but you'll never understand what you took. I deleted it. Because I understood exactly. She didn't lose a job. She lost access. She lost leverage. She lost the ability to operate unseen. And for someone like her, that was the only ending that mattered. After that call, the system closed completely. No more messages, no more leaks, no more warnings. At 9:00 a.m., Marcus sent a final confirmation. All active reviews merged, status sealed. That meant one thing. Nothing could be undone quietly anymore. At 10:20, the journalist called. She tried to retract her statements, he said, legally. And, I asked. She can't, he replied, too many independent records. At 11:45, an internal compliance bulletin surfaced. Not public, circulated quietly across firms. Her name appeared once, attached to a phrase that mattered. Repeat conduct confirmed. At 12:30, Benjamin sent his last message. They're asking if I was pressured. I replied immediately. Tell the truth. 3 dots appeared. Then vanished. At 1:50, Marcus called again. She's no longer represented, he said. No firm will take her. That ended resistance. At 3:00, a former executive from her second company submitted an affidavit, not against her directly, against the system that ignored early reports. That widened the circle. At 4:10, a compliance officer reached out to Marcus. Is the file complete? She asked. Yes, he replied, and frozen. At 5:45, the final internal decision landed. No announcements, no statements. Just classification. Non-rehirable. That word doesn't trend. It doesn't headline. But it ends careers. At 7:00 p.m., Benjamin tried calling again. Blocked. At 8:30, a woman Marcus had spoken to weeks earlier sent a short message. She can't hurt anyone now. That was the only confirmation I needed. At 10:00, I turned my phone off. Because there was nothing left to track. No escalation. No countermove. No reset. Everything Amelia relied on required access. And access was gone. Not loudly. Not publicly. Permanently, I thought the silence would hold. It didn't. At 11:47 p.m., a message appeared. No name, no number. Just text. You think you ended this? I didn't reply. Another message followed. You exposed me, but you didn't destroy me. Then another. You don't know what happens next. I forwarded all 3 to Marcus. His response came quickly. She found a channel she thinks isn't monitored. At 12:10 a.m., my phone rang. I didn't answer. A voicemail arrived seconds later. Her voice. Calm, measured, controlled again. You wanted accountability, Amelia said. You got chaos instead. She paused. You should have stopped when you had the chance. Marcus called immediately after. She's trying to provoke a reaction, he said. That's all she has left. At 1:05 a.m., the journalist texted. She contacted us again, asked for a retraction. And, I asked. We declined, he replied. She contradicted herself. At 2:30 a.m., one final message came through. Longer this time. She blamed the companies, the culture, the men, the system. She never mentioned the wives. She never mentioned the message. She never mentioned choice. I didn't read it twice. I archived it. At 8:00 a.m., Marcus sent a single update. She crossed into documented harassment. That changed the category. At 9:15, a compliance alert triggered automatically. Unauthorized contact, pattern continuation. At 10:40, a legal notice was issued. Not by me. By the system she had relied on for years. At noon, Marcus called. She just closed her last account, he said, not voluntarily. At 1:30, Benjamin emailed. She keeps reaching out. I replied once. Do not respond again. At 3:00, Marcus confirmed. She's been formally warned. Any further contact escalates. At 6:00 p.m., the final message arrived. Short. Exhausted. I don't know who I am without this. I stared at the screen. Then I deleted it. Because the story had never been about identity. It had been about access. And that door was sealed. Forever, after that message, nothing followed. No calls. No texts. No attempts. Silence held. That kind of silence only happens when every route is blocked. At 9:00 a.m., Marcus sent a final confirmation. All monitoring ended, no further activity. That meant she had stopped trying. Or she couldn't try anymore. At 10:30, the journalist sent one last note. Editors closed the file. Not buried. Completed. At noon, Benjamin's lawyer emailed mine. Subject, settlement accepted. No negotiation. No resistance. At 1:15, my lawyer replied. Everything finalized. That closed another door. At 2:00, a message came from a woman I'd never met. She contacted my husband last year, it read. We didn't know how to stop it, now I do. I didn't reply. The message didn't need one. At 3:40, Marcus forwarded an internal update from a firm outside our city. Candidate rejected, compliance risk. No name attached. It didn't need one. At 5:00, my sister called. It's really over, isn't it? She asked. Yes, I said. Not just for you, she added. I didn't answer. She already knew. At 6:30, Benjamin tried one last time. New number. One sentence. I never thought it would end like this. I blocked it without responding. At 8:00 p.m., I turned off my phone. No alerts followed. No emergencies. No unfinished threads. Because everything that needed to surface already had. Amelia wasn't hiding. She wasn't rebuilding. She wasn't waiting. She had reached the point people like her never planned for. Irrelevance. And once that happens, nothing brings it back. Nothing dramatic marked the end. No confrontation. No apology. No closure conversation. Just absence. Weeks passed without her name appearing anywhere. No firms, no announcements, no quiet re-entry under a different title. The channels that once protected her no longer answered. The system had adjusted, and systems don't look back. Marcus sent the final confirmation late one evening. She tried once more, he wrote. Indirect, shut down immediately. That was it. Benjamin disappeared from relevance just as quietly. No rebound story, no redemption arc. His silence spoke louder than any defense. The industry moved forward without him. What stayed was the record. It existed without effort now. Shared, stored, cross-checked. The kind of documentation that doesn't need reminders. One night, long after everything stopped, I reread the message that started it all. He's mine now, he's occupied, don't wait up. It no longer carried shock. It read like a confession. She thought power meant permanence. She thought patterns reset if you moved fast enough. She thought silence belonged to her. She was wrong. Because silence doesn't belong to anyone. It only exists until someone refuses it. There was no victory moment, no satisfaction rush, just certainty. She couldn't repeat it, she couldn't hide it, she couldn't pass it forward. That was the ending. Not revenge, not justice. Containment. And that is how it ended. Not with noise, but with nowhere left to go. You have reached the end of the text.